Hello folks, thank you for joining our session today for creating a strong video submission for YIC. This is being presented by myself, and Bashar was hoping to join, but he unfortunately advised he had a bit of an emergency situation come up, so he won't be able to join us today. But I am excited to be joined by many of the crew here, and congrats for getting to round 2. Before I kind of begin with my own introduction and also some of the content for our workshop here, I want to start off with Indigenous land acknowledgement. Something that Bashar reminded is, I am speaking here as a settler who is sitting on lands that have been unceded, often stolen, and ancestral to many generations who have come before me and before European settlers colonized. So I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking here specifically from Mi'kma'ki, or Chibiktuk in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded ancestral territories of the Mi'kmaq peoples. It is colonially known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. I want to recognize that, it's a huge privilege to even be in this position at the sacrifice, honestly, or I should say at the cost of so many Indigenous lives that have been lost through the years. But I'm going to share a bit of an intro about myself, and also we were sharing favorite ice cream flavors, so I'll put that in. So I've kind of my own background is as a young youth innovator. I've started 4 nonprofits, 2 tech startups. Some have gone really well, some have not gone well at all, and learned a lot in that journey. I'll be honest in saying I'm probably on the older side. I'm a bit. I'll just say I'm between 25 and 30. I won't say my specific age, but it's a bit on the older side, perhaps, of that youth innovation journey. But part of the reason I get passionate about things like YIC is that I've seen how competitions like this have benefited my own innovation journey in the past, and it's a huge privilege to be able to give back. I've kind of focused on a lot of different things in my journey. In particular, there's been a big focus on sports in the beginning, but then I looked at the environmental stuff. I'm Bengali Canadian, and so something that really impacted me was learning about catastrophic flooding, even impacting my close family in Bangladesh, experiencing some of that in Fredericton when I was living there. And that kind of journey really made me look at environmental space. I was also interested in things like innovation, entrepreneurship, and how do you bring young people together to do cool things like we are at YIC, explore the student engagement space as well. And what's interesting is, in many ways, although I'm kind of problem agnostic, I think the thing that really drives me is community and how we can create strong community groups, and that's what so we're hoping to create at YIC, and it's cool to see the group of absolutely brilliant innovators we have here. And so community development really has been my passion for the last little bit, and I've really been on the other side. I've been on the other side a bunch, I'll say, and it's definitely scary to be in things like these pitch competitions, and but I hope it's also exciting and fun. And something I want to really highlight is part of the idea with this journey is to have fun along the way. And for the workshop itself, I'm going to just highlight a couple things. And one thing I'm going to really begin with is we are wanting this to be a very much an interactive workshop. And so we're going to ask a bunch of questions. I think more so than whatever knowledge I might have, and I think the collective knowledge of the 8 of us who are here in this call is going to be much more powerful. And so I'm going to part of the structure of the workshop is to ask you folks some questions and hopefully generate some discussion. Also, there's going to be a framework I want to introduce you folks to, which is from Simon Senek, which is How, Why, What. And this is looking at a framework of how we share our ideas, or even think about our ideas, and also for the video itself, how it's kind of something that can be useful to perhaps think about how we demonstrate our story through that video. We'll also go through the rubric in a bit more detail. And finally, there's going to be a video critique where I'll share a past not-so-great video from a contest that I participated in a few years ago. And as well, we're going to see another example from project would end up winning that particular contest. I think you're going to see a few different ways of demonstrating videos, see like best practices that can arise from that. Something I'm also going to share that's really exciting is at the request of some participants in yesterday's workshop, we actually reached out to a lot of our top 10 participants, and we've given them until the end of today to potentially indicate to us if they may be willing to share. We're talking about last year's finalist participants, and some of them, we asked them to share, indicate if they might be open to sharing some of their past video submissions. And some of them have said yes, which is really exciting. So probably early tomorrow morning, in addition to the recording for this workshop, we are also going to have some of those videos on available for folks. And finally, there'll be some questions, and I'm willing to just kind of hang around for as long as people need to in order to get some questions answered. So, again, congrats. It's very exciting. How are people feeling? And maybe one word, let's go around. I don't actually see on the screen. That's just how Google Meets works. So one word, how are folks feeling? We'll go around.
I guess I'll just go adventurous.
Yay, I love it. Okay. And how about, do you want to tag someone else in the call?
Dolly.
I would say eager.
Love that.
Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Renard.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. I'd say optimistic.
Ooh, I love that. And who do you tag, Renard?
Sorry, let me just make the screen bigger so I can actually see the names. Sorry, I can't see the names right now for some reason.
Okay.
Can someone tag someone for me?
Sounds good. How about Ada? You're up.
Enthusiastic.
Okay, cool. Cool. And who's left?
Deluxe.
Cool. Selection.
I guess excited.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else left? I feel like there's one more, right?
I still have to go. First of all, tired, but no. I would say determined.
Love that. Okay, great way. Is there anyone else I've missed, or is that it? That's everyone, right? Cool. Okay. I love that, and I love that you guys are, positive feelings there, and I think especially as we get into deadline days, 3 days coming up, important to have that sense of determination, enthusiasm, optimism, and honestly, folks, what I love about some of these competitions like this, it's like forcing you to think about your idea and share it to the world, and that's scary. Like, that takes a lot of courage too. There's a lot of people, they have these brilliant ideas and they just kind of keep it to themselves, or they're afraid to actually tell the world that, hey, look at this cool thing that our team's thinking about. So for you folks to have that courage is amazing. Anyone feeling nervous at all? Like anxious? We got a bunch of anxious yesterday. I don't know. Like maybe this is a different group. Anyone feeling a bit anxious or nervous?
I guess I'm nervous too, but I think, I don't know. To me, this is really fun. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's fun to like have an idea and try to like cement it a little. So I guess I'm not seeing it as like what could go wrong, more as like this is fun. Like what could go right.
And you know what? I sometimes look at it, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is, okay, you don't get into the next round, and you have $1,000, which is great. And then also, you have this cool video that you can show to people, and you work with this cool team, and like it's like so many things can go right, through that journey. And I love that attitude. I think it's also completely natural if you're a little bit stressed. We feel stressed when we care about something. So if you feel stressed, it's because you care about your idea, your project, your problem. And so that's also super natural as well. So congrats, everyone, and I'm excited that you folks are excited, and it'll be cool to see your videos. So I'll share a bit about Simon Senek, Start With Why. But before I do so, has anyone heard of this concept at all? Feel free to just jump in, all right? This is just a jump-in conversation. Don't worry about hands and all that kind of stuff. Just jump in, and this is a small group here. So who's heard of Start With Why, or Simon Senek?
Yeah, I've heard of it years ago, and it comes up a lot because it's such a fantastic concept.
Cool. What do you know about it?
So I think there's like 3 layers to it, and the first layer of everything you do, it start with why, because people buy why you do things, not what you do. So you start with why, then you go to how, and then you go to what. I think something like that.
It's really like you said, it's about part of the framework is about how do we represent an idea to people? Because in a way, for the judges, you're trying to sell your idea. We have 40 teams. We're all trying to sell our fantastic ideas, and how do we sell it in the most effective way? And as part of Simon Senek's framework is, how can we frame that messaging to be as powerful as possible? Anyone else interact with this framework at all, or used it perhaps in your past work? Maybe not. That's cool. Cool. All right. Well, you know what? Let's maybe share about it, and then you can use it in the future. So I think it was well said. And in terms of there's three core layers to it. So a little bit of background actually about Simon Senek. So when he created this particular framework, it was based on a lot of research. So what he did is he looked at several hundreds of companies and organizations. And he explored, what makes some of them more successful than others. So, for example, how did Apple outcompete IBM? IBM was in that computer game for such a long time, and how does Apple come in and get the market share that it has? And he looked at, in particular, how are they messaging their ideas? How are they even thinking about their ideas in terms of the internal organization itself? And through that analysis, he came up with these 3 layers. There's an amazing TED Talk as well, and remind me if we forget, but I'll try to share that in the resources channel for you folks to have a look at. So 3 layers at the core. At the center, it's the why. Why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? And if you think of something like YIC, we actually did a exercise at the beginning of my term where we reflected on as an organization on what's the point of the Youth Impact Challenge? Like, why do we even exist as an organization, as a competition? We reached out to some of our different funders, our founders, different key youth who were involved in organizing in the past. And after a lot of discussion, we came up with, at the core, we were about turning ideas into action. What's interesting is that's super broad. There's a million ways you can turn ideas into action, but for us, that's a guiding principle, and it could be that the competition itself, that's going to evolve a ton. It could be that we don't run a competition in future years, but this core principle for the Youth Impact Challenge of turning ideas into action is what's central to how we like to approach our work, and that's what's kind of helped us kind of organize ourselves in terms of understanding what the point of our endeavors are. Next, I'd say is that how. How do you do what you do? And here I'll particularly emphasize things like values. In particular, for example, with the Youth Impact Challenge, in order to enact on our purpose of turning ideas into action, we have some core principles. One of them is embracing diversity. Another is encouraging collaboration. We are equity is also a big component of that. How and some of our core values. And so, the reality is when people submitted their initial submissions, there were some people who didn't submit exactly a 3-page proposal because there were equity-related reasons why we may have had to adapt it. But we weren't going to say no to that adapting, because if you look at our why, it's central for us to ensure that ideas are turned into action. And so with that, why is that purpose? How is, how are you going to do it? Think of those values in particular. And then what do you do is something like the competition. It's it's kind of the, this is the day-to-day operations of the thing, or this is how the program itself will work. We've got these 3 rounds, and it's in some ways less important than the why. And why, I'll say, it represents almost a constant across the organization's evolution, or whereas the how and the what have a little bit more space to evolve. The how a bit less so. What in particular, that should be evolving. Your idea in day 1 will be different. And so your problem might be your why. Your solution is more your what, right? Like, so oftentimes in entrepreneurship, they'll talk about falling in love with your problem, but not your solution, because your solution is changing. Your problem might be still at the core very similar. So I'm going to maybe pause here for a second, because I'd love for you folks to, let's take, it's 35 right now. Let's take 3 minutes. And just very briefly, like oftentimes you can take a whole day with your team. Like we took literally a month at YIC to go through this exercise, with our broader founders. But let's take 3-4 minutes and think about, for your particular idea, how would you define your why? How would you define your how? And also that end solution that you might have. So let's take 3 minutes here. We'll pause for a bit, and we'll maybe share after for anyone who wants to share. Does that make sense? Any questions, folks? Cool. All right. So we'll pause here. I'm going to mute myself while folks do it. We'll reconvene at we'll say 40. So for folks who have just joined the recording, we have gone through our how, I, what with a few different, or I should say why, how, and what, with a few different examples from our participants. And I'm going to encourage, if you are watching a recording, to think about applying this framework to your ideas. And something I'm going to also encourage you to do is, think about this as a way to both share your ideas to the world, and also it can be an important check as you go through evolution. So for example, for us at the Youth Impact Challenge, ideas to action, that's the core why, and some of our program will constantly change. And so encourage you folks to reflect on what that might be as a team, both for the purposes of the video and also beyond. Also for the video itself, let's maybe apply this framework to video. So I'm going to ask the group, and you just shout out an answer. Why are we creating this 5-minute video in the first place? Think about it from the audience's perspective. The obvious answer is you want to win $10,000, which is fair. But also, why, from an audience's standpoint, are we creating this 5-minute video?
Can you kind of clarify what you mean by from the audience perspective?
Sure.
So
Okay.
what do we want to see?
What do you want to accomplish? What do you want the viewer to feel, see, be when they watch your video?
I mean, my guess would be so that they can connect with the idea on a deeper level than just reading our 3-page pitch, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want them to connect with the idea. Any other thoughts, folks? I love that. Let's build on that.
Connect with the founders.
Connect with the founders. That's a great point, right? So you want them to see that, you know what, I like these people. These people will actually, they give a damn. They're accomplished. They know what they're doing. I believe in them. What else are we trying to do in terms of what else are we trying to accomplish with our video, especially as it relates to helping the participants or helping the audience feel something?
At least me personally, I'm trying to have them empathize with me, because text and paper, they are pretty cold. But when I use different tones, maybe different vocabs and different gestures, maybe even eye contact, they've realized the issue that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that would probably make the pitch more persuasive and make them more interested in what we are trying to solve.
I love that. So, is this about creating empathy with the team? You want them to feel the team's energy. You folks are so passionate about your problem. You care so much, and there's a reason why you've given so much energy to putting all this stuff together, whether it is a 3-page proposal or a 5-minute video. And you know what? Each in its own way can still accomplish demonstrating the why. But especially in that video, how do we move the audience to actually care about the problem? And the potential solutions you're offering as much as you do. How do you get them to connect with you, connect with your team, connect with your problem? How do you get them to empathize? And I think you've hit on the head. I would say the why for this video is you want them to connect and empathize with the team. So you want the audience to connect and empathize with the team. How? What's kind of some core values we want to try and accomplish as we create this video? Let's think about that. How? And there's one big one. I'll say it starts with S, ends with Ori, or Tori.
Story?
Story. Okay. Why is story so important?
Understand
Because
the
people-
context.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Someone go, then the other person.
I said because people connect with stories.
Explain a bit more. What do you mean they connect the stories?
It's more, I don't know, we're just more ingrained to connect with them emotionally, and it's easier to understand stories rather than facts.
I love that. Awesome. And someone else was jumping in as well?
Sorry, yeah, I think Dragos got it.
Perfect. We want, in order to create that connection, how are we going to do it? You want to tell a story of how these different component parts of your pitch are all linked to each other. You want to, like you said, we want to create that emotion in our audience. There is like this rubric, which you're going to go in a second, and that's kind of the what. Then there's all this content that we do need to cover, and certainly from a strategic value, we want to check some of those things. But how do we link it and then make it flow is really powerful. So what will often make certain videos stand out over others is the way that they're effectively able to tell a compelling and powerful story about their innovation. In terms of the what itself, what do you think I'm going to talk about next? Here we're going to get into some of the details of the rubric itself with our competition. So have folks had a chance to look at a rubric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is going to be an important guiding doc. Definitely look at it. We found that we had some very, very strong proposals in round one, but something we identified was it could be valuable to share the rubric just so that folks know what from the judges' side what they are looking at. So there's a few kind of core buckets that we are wanting to ensure folks have. So talking about the project as a whole, the impact and / implementation, and the team. The project as a whole, that's about 10 points in total, 5 for the innovation itself and 5 for viability. In terms of getting doing well on this section, it's important that you've identified your problem in a strong way. You've got an interesting idea that's exciting and I'll say new. It doesn't have to be completely brand new. No idea is ever really completely new, but it's at least it's something that's it may be a bit of a novel twist. It's a twist to what else is out there, and have a strong analysis of of existing competitors or other people doing similar things. I'm going to make a note that a change that we made in a rubric actually today, because we had a chat as a team about it, is in the beginning this said that there would be no existing competitors, but something we identified as a team is really every innovation out there does have competitors, no matter how. And in fact, if you say that you have no competitors, that means you're pretty much, you haven't done your research. So there's always going to be a competitor out there. It could be that, there isn't an app that does exactly what you do, but people are using spreadsheets to solve the problem they're trying to solve. So there's often existing competitors out there. So in order to get strong marks on this, think about what's going to make your idea stand out. How is it? Have you shared your problem in a compelling way? And have you looked at what the different competitors or others who are addressing that similar kind of issue? Also, you think about viability. In particular, what's have you thought about the extent and the scope of the potential demand and or need for the problem? And have you thought about like the complexity that's going to be involved in terms of getting your solution out there? So in order to get informed cannabis out there, have you thought about the challenges that are involved in getting an education program out to the world? You might be dealing with school boards, universities, and all these different layers. And have you given some thought in terms of what it's going to take to actually make that happen? And this connects with the implementation plan as well. And a lot of these things do interact and connect with each other. With the impact, I think this is one where thinking about having a detailed an idea of that you've researched and thought about. If this solution were implemented, this is what could happen. So with potential beauty, if we were to implement our solution, and we sold so many units, this is how much plastic we could potentially get out from the environment, or this is how much waste we could actually prevent in terms of food waste. And so thinking about that impact, and in many ways there's always a range in these things, and usually sometimes people will just touch on stuff, and then you can often tell when people have done their research and there's actually a strong sense that that what they're doing will actually make a really big difference. Implementation. This is one area which I'll say was lacking in some round one proposals. So I'd say implementation and team were the two bigger weaknesses in round one. And so here, thinking about what is that plan in terms of here are the different stages for us to get to make our problem, to ensure that our solution is implemented, or even to fully understand the problem, because it could be that we've got a problem that we think is there, but there's still a bunch of research that we need to do. So thinking through these steps that are involved in order to get your solution off the ground. Here, one thing I'm going to say is we are early stage ideas here, and so the expectation isn't that someone is going to have a fully developed idea or a fully developed app or a prototype, or we've got, if you're informed cannabis, that you've got all your education programming all sorted. That's not the expectation. However, at least you've thought about what it's going to take in order to actually get that idea off the ground. And you've got a bit of a strategy to it. And if you do have things like screenshots of what you're planning on doing, if you've got a website, then demonstrate that. And I would say if you've done some work, this is where you want to demonstrate it. It's not a requirement of in order to get full marks, and this is early stage. But if you have done some initial work, maybe you've got some prototype on Figma, which is this thing to design apps, and you haven't coded stuff, but you've got some designs. That's great. Show what you have. And then for founding team, this is again an area which people were a bit weaker in round one. I'm really going to emphasize. Talk about it's just as much about connecting with the team as you've identified as it is about connecting with the idea. So talk about the skills and experiences on your team, how the different members are complementing each other, and if there are gaps, and that's perfectly okay. You've recognized those gaps, and what's your plan for dealing with them? Maybe there's a particular skill set that you're looking to recruit. And so with this, I will say this is the content that you want to make sure that's in there. I'm going to encourage you folks to potentially even share this rubric to a friend or your mentor, and your mentors do have the rubric to look at already. And if you've got a draft of your video, show that to them and say, hey, how are you grading us on these different things? So this is the content, and then the challenge is to turn it all into a story. So ultimately, the why and the point of these things is you want to make that judge, you want to move that judge to really care about your problem, your solution, your team. All right, folks, I'm going to pause there for a bit, allow for some questions, especially on the rubric itself. Any questions?
I guess. Oh, somebody has their hand up.
All right, go ahead, Amanda.
Hi. I was just wondering, when talking about market analysis or analyzing our potential competition, should we be naming brands by name, or mentioning brands by name?
Yeah. So if this was an entrepreneurship competition, then you are expected to mention brands by name. You could choose to not do that. In terms of, you could choose, there's other competitors, but actually, if you mention brands by name, that's that much more powerful. And you know what? There's nothing to hide there. It's showing that you've done your research. There are some powerful brands who are working on some similar things, but this is what's making you different. Make sure you've also identified the differentiating factor that keeps you different from others. It could also be that you've identified people who are working on this problem, and you actually are talking about partnering with them. And especially for some nonprofit innovations, that's often the way to go is, you know what, there's some many great players working on this problem. We have a bit of a different twist. We actually want to work with with the others. And so talk about your competitors and think about, how you're differentiating and or working with them.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. And I think, was it Dolly who had a...
Oh, yeah. I guess I'm wondering, what was, I don't know if I just missed it or if there was, if you guys used the rubric for the top 40. And I mean, I know we saw, the constructive feedback, for the projects, but I don't know if there's a way we can see our rubric to see where else we kind of fell flat.
It's a great question. It has come up. The decision the team made, consistent with previous years, was to not share specific scores from round one. However, if that's feedback maybe that we can bring to the team and to the future and say that, hey, it's come up a couple times, people have been asking to see these scores potentially. And this is what I'll do. If folks message me, DM me, I'm not going to give you the scores, but I can tell you that this is the area you scored weakest in, this is the area you scored lowest in, something like that, just very, very broad. I don't think we can give anything more than that, just because it's just a decision that the team and the board and all of them made. But I appreciate the ask, and if you do DM me, then I can perhaps, or even just in team channels, we can advise your biggest weakness and versus and biggest strength, and that's all. We can't give you specific numbers. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally fair. Thank you.
Okay, and that's again fair for everyone, and that's going to apply to everyone. So it's not like anyone's getting special treatment. Dragus, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So this I was wondering, how can we fit all of this in 5 minutes? It seems a bit hard. So I was wondering if you have any ideas on how to, space it out and time it out.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. So it used to be a 7-minute pitch, and then I'm used to 3 and 4 minute pitches. Okay, in terms of other innovation contests, and I was like, why are you giving people 7 minets? They can do it in 5 minutes, and that's a challenge. I will say you can definitely do it in 5 minutes. 5 minutes is actually in some ways more generous for competitions like this. We're going to share a couple examples, where in terms of previous winners, thankfully some of the previous folks were open to sharing their videos, and that can perhaps potentially be a guide, including one of the grand prize winners, and so you can see, have a bit of a guide in terms of how they've done it. It's definitely a challenge. I would say in many ways you're budgeting a minute for each of these different sections. And the problem solution, the very first one, is actually really important. So maybe it could be put maybe a little bit more than a minute. It's a challenge, but it's very doable. We're going to share a few examples. People did it in 7 minutes. I'll share one that I did in 5 minutes for another, like a global pitch competition, which one of my teams won. And that actually had more of a detailed rubric than this. It had all these sections plus more. So it's definitely possible to do it. All right, Dragus, it's a challenge, but it's possible. You
Perfect.
can do it.
Sounds
I believe in you.
Thank you.
And you know what? And it's fair to everyone else, right? So everyone has to do it. That's part of the challenge. It is going to be cut at 5 minutes exactly. So be sure that you are mindful of that. All right, cool. Any last questions, folks, or should I go into our very last part of the workshop? Okay. I don't see any more questions. So if people do have questions, then what I'm going to encourage is to please message in those DM or not even DM actually. Do you guys all have team channels? And this is where you can also your other teammates are there as well. So message in those team channels if you do have any questions that come up. That's my preference. If you send an email, that's also fine, but usually that's the Slack is the fastest way to get a response. And the other thing I will say is I did open up a decent chunk of office hours essentially for this week. So if people do need to connect or want to connect and have essentially a half hour with myself, then that's perfectly okay. Bashar and Ashley also bring in a ton of different expertise. So if you want to connect with them, maybe just just message us and we can potentially try to find some time for you to connect with them. Ideally, not all three of us, but if you do want to connect with someone from the organizing team, that's great, and in addition to your mentors and to your Slack channel. So there are supports. People who ask will oftentimes get the most out of our supports. Alrighty, folks. So let us go into the very last part of our workshop, which is comparing and contrasting two videos from another pitch competition. I'm going to say that this particular pitch competition, it's Hack the Earth from 2020. It's not a YIC one. Part of the reason I'm sharing these is because I've got permission to actually use them in a workshop setting, and I've used this in other pitch kind of workshops that I've done with other groups. Something I'm also going to encourage as I share these two contrasting pitches is for you to think, what's worked and what hasn't worked in each of those two pitch settings. And maybe that'll also give an idea of how much you can, what story flow and things like that. These are 3-minute pitches versus the 5 minutes. And one thing that in this particular rubric, implementation wasn't a requirement, and so neither of her pitches talked much about implementation, and neither was team. So those are obviously, if it was 5 minutes, we can think about extending that moving forward. But have a look at it, and let's think about best practices from a video side. And here especially, we're going to maybe analyze that how both of the two teams here have each done their pitch in different ways, and then we can go through that. I'm just going to go mute for a second, just because, or there's going to be an echo if I don't. So give me 1 second here, folks, and we will get going.
Hi everyone, my name is Shitangshu, and I'd like to introduce you to the Oath Project. Our story today begins here, in the oceans, which is sadly home to no less than 150 million tons of plastic waste. That devastates so many species, but in particular this one, the leatherback turtle, an evolutionary marvel that has survived 116 million years, and yet today is among the most endangered animals on the planet. The challenge for this turtle is it likes to eat jellyfish, but far too often mistake plastic bags for its dinner, leading to poisoning, choking, and even death. It was hearing this story 3 years ago I found myself wanting to make change, but I'm no engineer, I'm a marine biologist, and so I asked, what could I do? How could I help the turtles? And I made this commitment to pick up one piece of litter each day. Maybe a bit more, which I have, proud to say, have done so far to date. Now, I'd like to think this made a difference, however small, but I'll start pondering this question. How do you get these small-scale actions to scale? How can I motivate
Okay, so I'm just seeing some people say that they can't hear. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Is that true for everyone? Okay, cool. Okay, I think there's we have to make sure the internal audio is being looked at. So give me 1 second, folks. I'm just going to do some tech fixing and get this sorted. It was working yesterday really well, so there is a way. I think we just have to make sure. I know what exactly we need to do. You're going to need to go to Tab Share, Oath Project, Share Tab Audio. So I'm sharing my Tab Audio right now, and so now if there is any issues, just shout saying there's some issue. Okay, just because I can't see if people raise their hands. Yeah. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Shitangshu, and I'd like to introduce you to the Oath Project. Our story today begins here, in the oceans, which is sadly home to no less than 150 million tons of plastic waste. That devastates so many species, but in particular this one, the leatherback turtle, an evolutionary marvel that has survived 116 million years, and yet today is among the most endangered animals on the planet. The challenge for this turtle is it likes to eat jellyfish, but far too often mistake plastic bags for its dinner, leading to poisoning, choking, and even death. It was hearing this story 3 years ago I found myself wanting to make change, but I'm no engineer, I'm a marine biologist, and so I asked, what could I do? How could I help the turtles? And I made this commitment to pick up one piece of litter each day. Maybe a bit more, which I have, proud to say, have done so far to date. Now, I'd like to think this made a difference, however small, but I'll start pondering this question. How do you get these small-scale actions to scale? How can I motivate others to do the same? Beyond just litter pickups, how do you get people in general to do small-scale environmental acts and come together, when added up, make such a difference? So here I was inspired by technology-driven movements like the Arab Spring, the Time's Up movement, or Greta Thunberg's hashtag Friday for Futures events. And inspired too by petition-making sites like Change.org. And so the idea was born, the Oath Project, where we use technology to drive change by having people commit petition style to do one act at a time to help the Earth. Hashtag take the oath. So how does it work? Let's go to our website. The project challenges people to undertake a campaign. And each campaign challenges them to do a small act every day, every month, every year perhaps. It can make a difference, whether that is a commitment to one piece of litter each day or planting just one tree a year. And clicking that act, they can sign up to do that change. Again, petition style. Except the audience here is not a government or some corporation, but themselves. They are signing a petition demanding and committing themselves to do those actions. Then there's the hashtags. Getting friends to share, tag, and more. And our mailing list where we check in to hold people accountable to their promises, offer opportunities so that they can help us together decide on what the next Oath project is to take. One that we choose each month together. This is what gets me most excited. This calculator here. The impact calculator. For truly it can be seen that one piece of litter might not make such a big difference. When 3,000 people commit to it, that can amount to 50 tons diverted in a decade. And what if it got to have 1 million? Well, then we're talking about tons diverted in thousands. This is a way to embrace collective action. That's perhaps when I talked to environmental NGOs and my contacts over the last couple of days, they saw merit in the idea. In fact, it's with their help that we're actually planning a full-scale launch of the website, with particular help from wonderful folks at Oceanwise in BC on June 4, World Environmental Day. I'd like to end here with this quote from Howard Zinn, that small acts when multiplied by millions of people can change the world. For that is really the ethos of our mission, the essence of our project. I'd like to ask you to help us in this mission, help us find those contacts, help us join our campaigns, and let us together make the world a better place. All right, folks. So it always makes you cringe, whenever you watch your own stuff. And I think there's a lot wrong in that video. So what could have been done better? Constructives.
I mean, I guess I wish I would have seen your face.
Fair. Okay, absolutely. You're right. Especially, you've got a team there, or you got someone who's might be passionate about. Okay, where are you? That would have been very powerful. Absolutely. Great note, Dolly. Any others? Constructives.
I don't think you talked about team enough.
100%, right? That and again, it wasn't a requirement of it, but I think it would have been more powerful if we did talk about the team a bit more. How about delivery, in terms of delivery itself? Anything that could have been improved?
It could have been slower paced and with more of impact instead of 100%. Kind of being rushed.
Yeah, it was like a train, right? I'm going like a train. It's like, can you stop for a second? Let's absorb, absorb the energy. Mirza, I think you unmuted there.
Sorry, yeah, it was the same comment. It was a bit too fast.
Sounds good. All right, any other thoughts, folks, in terms of constructives? How about positives, then? Positives. So what are some good things? And by the way, this is one that was done essentially as a PowerPoint slideshow in terms of the actual style of it. No super fancy animation there. And, you just have a kind of a prototype website. A very viable way to do it in terms of the technology used. What are some positives for what you folks saw, especially in terms of the presentation and the video itself?
I like the outline kind of that you followed, you told a story at the start, and then kind of talked about where you were with the idea and how you hoped it would scale, and then kind of showed how you would make it scale. So I thought it flowed really well to kind of explain the problem to the solution.
Absolutely. And you know what? I remember working on that outline and just the text for that. I mean, there's the graphics for it, but there's also text for that. And thinking about, especially when you're saying this, and for some people, outlines work really well. For some people, it's more impromptu that works well. And you figure out what works for you, but especially to get the flow right in that limited time. So Dragos, one of your questions, how do you squeeze this in 5 minutes? Is sometimes you really want to be very careful with your words. You may want to write out your words and really see how it's all going to flow in that 5 minutes, time yourself, all that kind of stuff. Any other notes, folks, from a positive side?
I thought you were really enthusiastic and really knowledgeable, so I don't know, I guess it was like kind of like the whole like trust building on like that, oh, he can do this.
And you know what? That's where that research can be valuable, especially for a lot of environmental problems. And you talk about scale of certain environmental problems, there is food waste or the plastic pollution problem. Some of that scientific knowledge and in this, what I'm saying isn't just based on I think plastics are bad, but look at the stats, right? And so like that's very valuable, and showing passion in your pitch, and sometimes you get people who are very monotone, but actually having that energy can be really powerful. All right, folks, we're gonna try another one, and then we're gonna do another quick debrief, and at that point we'll go to any questions. So I'm gonna do screen share again, and this time I will make sure that we are doing internal audio for the computer. Just so there's no echo, I am going to mute myself again.
We've created a volunteering service called Up We Grow that connects people who want to donate their private land to volunteer gardeners who want to provide their gardening expertise. We then connect the gardeners and landowners to various food drives to donate the produce in the local Waterloo area to organizations like Community Support Connections, Cambridge Food Bank, and Food Not Bombs.
Users are prompted to select whether they are a gardener looking for a garden, or landowners looking for gardeners, or if they already have an account, they can simply log in. Let's make an account as a gardener. Before moving on, the app presents a native land acknowledgement to the user. The user is taken through a series of questions in order to complete his or her profile. Once the account is created, the user sees their info laid out on their profile page. Next, onto the Schedule tab. Here the user can see the available times to work at a garden. The user can also tap to sign up for one. This feature is tied to a database, allowing the organization to add new time slots, as well as view the gardeners and landowners who have signed up, which is essential for the matching process. This brings us to the last tab, the Matches. Here the user can see the garden that they have matches to volunteer at. In this demo, the user matches with Sally Baker, a gardener near them in Waterloo. The scheduled time is 12 to 3 p.m., as was the time slot selected on the Schedule tab.
Both landowners and gardeners have the potential to have an incredibly positive impact on their local community by sharing their resources and talents with Up We Grow. In an average beginning season with just 25 volunteers, of which 8 are landowners donating land and 17 are volunteer gardeners, Up We Grow could feed as many as 132 community members, watch 8 beautiful gardens flourish, nurture 709 plants, convert 22 square meters of otherwise uncultivated land to profitable gardens, and reduce the need for at least 16 transportation trucks.
Alrighty, folks. Yeah. All right. So, we'll just do positives and constructives together. Positives, constructives. In the interest of time, we'll do it all at once. You want to share? What do you folks think of that video? Positive or constructive, or both?
I think just comparing the two of those, the second one seemed so much more like, I don't know, like concise, more succinct. Like it felt like every single word mattered. And I loved the visuals, like you guys having the app and like showing how it worked. And like I wanted to use the app, so
beautiful.
I really liked it.
Yeah, and 2 minutes 30 versus 3 minutes. They had 3 minutes, they didn't even need it, right? So hey, Dragons, get some advice from them, right? Like you don't even need like to use the full time. They actually maybe said more and less, and very concise, beautiful visuals. The prototype was really well done. Absolutely. Any other thoughts, folks?
I really like the music. It kind of added like a whole great vibe to it, but I think they started talking too late. It just felt a bit weird. Felt like an ad at the beginning, but I did like the music.
Yeah.
And I think it was I liked it, but I think they spent too much on the solution. They went
Fair,
too
100%.
in depth.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. So you don't need to show me the scheduling and all that. Talk about the concept at a very high level. Show me that, you know what, you've got some interesting screenshots. That's great. And that's probably good enough, right? And so the solution could potentially have been a place to be a bit more succinct, even though that was nicely done. Music, upbeat, it's emotional, right? It drives it. It makes you hopeful. There's this sense of, oh my gosh, I really want to support this team. I'm very hopeful. I love what they're doing, right? Very well done as well. There's another thing I really like. How about the impact section? Any thoughts on the impact section, folks?
My internet was cutting in and out a bit, but I think I heard something at the end about like a number of trucks or something like that.
Yeah.
But I just thought that like having like kind of like real numbers, but like a number someone can relate to also, really puts the impact into perspective. So it kind of feels more important than just saying
Exactly.
we could make an impact.
Yeah, if I created 1 unit of this is what could happen. If I delivered a course, or if I, whatever it is, right? If there was from however you evaluate your impact, they've actually given some thought in terms of calculating it, and then also there's this element of they've done their research, and also for YIC specifically, there's the other side to it. It's also thinking about how you're going to measure it, and that's maybe something that wasn't as important in this particular pitch competition, but they've thought about the impact as well. Dolly, you had something to say, and maybe the last comment as it relates to this particular video.
Oh, I think I was gonna say the same thing. Just like talk about like how many trucks of food and like land that was uncultivated that could be cultivated. That's impactful for me.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Talk about the opportunity, and you know what, we can see that there's actually there's implementation, there's a viability there, right? There is actually a lot of land out there that is could be cultivated, and here's that great opportunity. Something I'm also going to share, which I think is exciting in a way, is so they end up winning the competition itself. We were a category winner, so you both did well. Each of us used very different styles, right? So one was more, it wasn't maybe as much music there, but there's a PowerPoint and more of a standard kind of presentation. One's a bit more animated. Each of us did some things better and worse. I think with you folks, it's thinking about how you're going to tell your story in the most effective way. In the end, a competition is a competition. Your projects and your innovations go well beyond YIC, and I want to share that message of we want to help you folks make these dreams happen. Ultimately, YIC is one opportunity, but whether you win or lose, sometimes the real winners are the folks who learned something, met some people, used the networking opportunities, and were able to make their idea happen. So I hope you folks take the opportunity with the Youth Impact Challenge to make your ideas happen. Thank you for being part of the workshop. I'm going to pause the recording now and allow for any time for questions. Thank you, folks.